Hey everybody, it is Monday afternoon and my wife informed me today that we are actually starting to get some deer damage in this garden over here, and we're actually even getting some deer damage in the beds over closer to the house. So I knew we were getting damage in the driveway, but I hadn't really seen much in the way of damage over here, just some very minor stuff. But as we get our eye in and start looking closer, I know it's probably a little more difficult for you on the other end of the camera here to see it, but I can see all over the place we've got flower heads that have been removed right as they're getting ready to bloom. You can see all these little sticks sticking up. These had flowers on them as of a couple days ago, or I should more accurately say they had flower buds on them a few days ago. The deer are very good at watching and waiting, and in the same way that you might not pick an apple until it's perfectly ripe, the deer, you can see over here, eat the flower buds right before they bloom. Very rarely, and right here in fact is a case where they've eaten the flowers themselves. More often than not, the flower buds are what get eaten by the deer, and it's usually right when they're ready to go. See over here, you can see some of these larger ones have been eaten, and these were already blooming. You can clearly see the top of that one's been munched off. Now these do bloom from the bottom up, so the top flowers might not have been fully opened yet. It's hard to say, but it's really unusual to see the flowers eaten. Now, my regular viewers know that I actually own my own business and I spray deer repellent. I actually keep deer out of other people's gardens, and this is the first year ever that we've actually had deer on our property. I live out in kind of a rural area, and while it may seem counterintuitive, it's more of the suburban areas where the deer do a lot of damage on people's property. The reason being is because they're so overcrowded and there's so much development and so little habitat. Out where I live, there's, you know, miles and miles of woods and farmland and everything else out here. So typically the deer have plenty of natural forage and don't need to come into our yard to feed. So this year has been the worst year I've seen from a business point of view. So it's getting so bad that it's actually bleeding over into our yard, which is, again, very unusual. First year we've ever had deer in our yard. So what I did recently, we're going to take a walk down through the woods, if you want to call them that. I opened up a path to my driveway, and what I wound up doing was opening up a path for the deer to just come strolling right up into the yard too. Now it is entirely possible that they're coming over the fence right here where it's really low. Of course, for the deer, any of this fence is really low. They can jump over a 10-foot fence from a standstill. They don't even need to be running, and I can see all sorts of damage down here. If you come down here, we can see this tall weed right here. All of that's damaged. You can see the tops of these are all damaged down here. All of this has been chewed off. So again, it's very possible that they're coming across the street and they're coming up and just coming right over this fence, because that fence would present no obstacle whatsoever for them. But they would have always been able to do that. They could have done that any year since we've lived here, and we've never had the deer over here before. It wasn't until I opened up this gap down here that we suddenly started seeing the deer coming up into the yard. And so I don't see a lot in the way of damage over here, but I also don't see a lot of the types of plants that the deer damage. But this was my path out to the driveway. You can see my stepping stones go right on down, and so I went up into the top of my yard and I cut a bunch of bamboo, and you can see the top bar here and the X I made, and then all that bamboo. So there is no longer a secret path down to my mailbox. I'm gonna have to take the long way around to go down the driveway to get to the mailbox from now on. Speaking of which, the neighbors out getting their mail. So hopefully that will stop them from coming over here. I also took some bamboo and I put it over this way so that they couldn't come around, and hopefully that is going to block them out completely. My deer repellent makes the food that they eat taste unpleasant and unpalatable, and that prevents them from eating it. But the other way you can prevent deer damage is simply to change their behavior, force them to go around somewhere else. So I suspect that they're not necessarily coming up into the yard out of desperation. It's probably not that they're so hungry. It's just that it's opportunistic. They walk up that path, they walk up and hey, they're right smack in my garden with all of those hostas and everything else. So they're just going to nibble on them. So hopefully by just pushing them out like that and making them go somewhere else, that will be the end of it, and they won't be coming up here and into the garden over there anymore. So cross your fingers. And look, you can even see this hosta right here in front of us. All of the flowers have been nibbled off of that too. All of those are gone. And this is one of our new hostas, one of our good hostas. You can see it's the one of the wee, and that's W-H-E-E-E. I'm not sure how many E's there are. But that's all damaged. This is all eaten. It's not just the flowers, it's the foliage too. So they've definitely been up here munching away. So, all right, everybody. Wasn't exactly a yard tour, but make sure you're subscribed and you won't miss any of the updates or my yard tours or anything else, and we'll see how my little preventative measure worked or not. So again, make sure you're subscribed, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.